I'm sure somewhere along the way you've either read somewhere or heard someone say that it is important to eat something after you've exercised if you are planning on building some muscle, or just to make sure that you are benefiting the most out of that exercise session. And that is definitely true, but there are certain things that we need to bear in mind and certain things that are a little bit more important than others. So I thought in today's video, I just talk a little bit about a few things that you need to bear in mind when you are planning your post-workout meal. So let's dive in. So first of all, hi, my name is Melissa Null. I'm a registered dietitian and I'm part of the Body 20 Nutrition Doctor team, if you don't know me by now. And I hope these videos are helpful. Please follow along. We do make them every second week. And you are welcome to send us any questions if you do have any via WhatsApp or email. So post-workout nutrition is definitely important because we definitely want to make sure that we are supporting the body in recovering after the training session, but then also building the muscle that we worked so hard on building in that training session, right? So I'm sure you've heard someone somewhere say that you need to eat protein or you need to drink a protein shake after your exercise. So that is definitely true. We see that in the research that consuming at least 20 to 40 grams of protein after a workout actually facilitates protein synthesis, in other words, muscle building, and that is necessary, of course, if we do want to continue training and don't feel too tired or too stiff or, cause injury, but then also if we do want to see, building of muscle and changing of body composition. Now, the 20 to 40 gram rule, typically you can work on 20 gram if you are on the lighter side, that would be maybe more your ladies, and then 40 grams if you are heavier or maybe bigger built. But what is really important to bear in mind that if, let's say, you've had a really proper meal before your training session, let's say you tend to go for your training session after you've had your lunch or after you've had a quite nice protein-packed breakfast or dinner, then it isn't actually that important to really make sure that you're consuming that 20 to 40 grams after your training session, because there is that protein and amino acids actually already, present in the bloodstream that can facilitate in building the muscle and then also changing the body composition. Why I'm saying this is that it is really important to bear in mind that if your goal is fat loss and also protein or muscle building, then we do need to concentrate or focus on or be cautious about the amount of calories you consume throughout the whole day and, of course, throughout the whole week. So unfortunately, protein isn't something that we can kind of just consume and don't worry about the calories that it consumes or that it contains, We do still need to keep that at the forefront, because even if it's from protein, if it's an excess of calories that you are consuming, you might actually be adding to the amount of fat in your body. So that's why I say, if you are planning on building muscle, which I think most of us should be, we do definitely want to make sure that there is sufficient amount of protein in the diet. So if you've had a protein-packed meal before your training session, you don't need to stress too much about having something after your training session, if that makes sense. However, if you didn't really have much to eat throughout the day, or you had such a busy day and you didn't really eat, focus on your protein intake and you are doing your training session, maybe then think of having a good quality protein meal or recovery drink or supplement afterwards. That leads me to my second point, that there is no difference really necessarily in consuming a protein meal in the form of food versus a supplement, whether it is a shake or a bar or whatever it might be. It really comes down to your personal preference and your time constraints and your budget and your taste preferences at the end of the day. So if you tend to enjoy eating a meal after your training session, go for it. Maybe you're someone that feels really uncomfortable after a training session, you really can't stomach much, then a smoothie or a protein shake might be the answer for you. So there isn't really one that's better than the other. It really comes down to your preferences at the end of the day. If you are having a meal, just make sure that there is a sufficient amount of protein, so 20 to 40 grams of protein depending on your body size. So 20 grams of protein, what is that? That would typically be about 3 eggs, more or less, or 90 grams of cooked meat. Or then it would be something like a protein, a plant-based protein would be your legumes or your beans, or it could be tofu, for example, also about a cup or half a cup of that. So that's also a way to get in protein is through plant-based sources. It doesn't just need to be meat or animal sources. Right. So the last point that I want to also allude to is the carbohydrate intake when it comes to your exercise. So we're always focusing on protein, and rightly so, because that is very important for building and recovering the muscles. But we also need to recover the energy stores that we've used up in that training session with glycogen, or, in the form of glucose that we find in our carbohydrates. So if you are maybe training twice a day, or let's say you trained in the evening and you need to train the next morning again, there isn't really 24 hours time for recovery, then I do recommend you consume a fast releasing type of carbohydrate. So it's something that is a little bit higher in GI. So that would be something like a fruit, or something that's a little bit lower in fiber, like, for example, your rice, or it could also be things like a cracker bread, or things like that. That's going to help just release that glucose a little bit quicker into the bloodstream, and then get into the glycogen stores for your next session that might be coming up later in the day, or then maybe the next morning. However, if you are training this morning and only, the next morning again, you have about 24 hours recovery, then I still urge you to opt for your lower GI, fiber-rich, minimally processed carbohydrates, because your body will have sufficient amount of time throughout the day to metabolize those and convert it into glycogen that can be stored and be ready for you to use for your next training session. So that's basically it. We need to keep it simple. I've noticed that sometimes it can be so complex, and with so many guidelines and opinions and things out there, we often find it very difficult to know what to do. So just keep it simple. Make sure you are consuming protein, whether it is before your training session or after your training session. Just make sure either before or after you have a form of protein, whether it be animal source or plant-based, that's fine. Whether it be food-based or supplement-based, that's completely fine. It's your preference. And then, of course, make sure you are including a nice, good quantity of carbohydrates. And like I mentioned, if you are training maybe in less than 24 hours, or let's say within 12 hours after your last session, make sure it's easy digestible carbohydrates. It's going to release the glucose fast. So things like your higher GI types of carbohydrates, like your fruits, can also be a bar, or cereal bar, like, for example, or it could be your rice or cracker breads or something like that. That's going to release its carbohydrates a little bit quicker. However, if you do have 24 hours to recover, then rather opt for your lower GI, higher fiber types of carbohydrates to keep the blood sugar levels controlled throughout the day. And at the end of the day, just be mindful of the amount of calories. We don't want to overdo it, especially if your goal is to maintain your body composition or to reduce fat in your body as well. If you have any questions, let us know. We're here to help you, and then I'll see you in the next one.